So this is the lecture 6 of the computer systems and programming, and it will be related to the operating systems. So in this lecture we will look at what are the operating systems, its major functions, what is user interface, examples of the operating system. So operating system is the most important program that runs on a computer. Operating system is an interface between computer and the user. So it is basically a you can say program. So it acts between the user and the interface like a bridge. It is responsible for the management and coordination of activities and the sharing of resources to the computer. So you can understand this in this schematic, that this is the user and this is the, you can say, the hardware. So operating system lies directly above the hardware, and the local applications run on the operating system, which directly involves the interaction with the user. So user has two layers of abstraction between the hardware and itself. So user give instructions to the application interact with the operating system, and operating system interacts with the hardware. So operating systems acts as a bridge between the hardware and the user with the use of the application. So operating systems are, you can say, interact with the applications. All the hardware drives, mouse, printer, user, keyboard, monitor, all are, you can say, connected or operated by the operating system, and which acts as a bridge between the user and the hardware. So there are different types of operating system. The real-time operating system, the multi-user versus single-user operating system, multiple tasking or single tasking operating system, distributed or embedded operating systems. So a real-time operating system is a multitasking operating system that aims at executing the real-time applications, respond to input instantly. For example, if there is a data coming, data is coming, and the system is processing, or you can say plotting the data. So this type of activity is a real-time activity. So anything that operates or working in a, you can say, a real-time scenario will be called a real-time operating system. Multiple or multi-user versus single user. Multi-user operating system allows multiple users to access a computer system concurrently. Time sharing system can be classified as a multi-user system, as they enable the multiple user access to the computer through the sharing of time. Single user operating systems, as opposed to the multiple user operating systems, are usable by a single user at a time. So multi-user operating system will allow, you can say, if this is the system and it is running some multi-user operating system, so the multiple other computers can interact, or you can say share the resources of this multiple user operating system. Similarly, there are different, you can say, other computers that can interact and use the resources of this system. So this is, you can say, a multi-user operating system. When a single program is allowed to run at a time, the system is grouped under the single tasking. If there is a single program that is running, then there is a single tasking system. If there are multiple, then there are multiple. While in the case of the operating system allows the execution of multiple tasks at one time, it is classified as multiple operating system. So a distributed operating system manages a group of independent computers and makes them appear a single computer. Distributed, for example, there is a computer and it is running some operating system. There is another computer that is running some other. So a distributed operating system will, you can say, manage the data through all of these, you can say, distributed system. So maybe a task is, you can say, distributed between these three computers and then combined together by the operating system. So such kind of distributed operations managed by the operating system is called the distributor. The development of the network computers that could be linked and communicate with each other gave the rise to the distributor system. So the networking systems of the computer and their ability to link and communicate with each other basically gives rise to the distributed operating systems. Embedded operating systems are designed to be used in the embedded computer systems. They are designed to operate on the small machines are they are able to operate in a limited number of resources. So these embedded operating systems are used in the, you can say, for example, there is a CNC that is running some operating system. Alright, so it will have a specific operating system that will be confined within that machine. Alright, so it may not be, you can say, it has less autonomy outside the system, but it will be really specifically designed for that specific, you can say, machine or task. So this kind of embedded operating system also are present. So the major functions of operating system, there are these, you can say, the major functions: the resource management, data management, job management, and standard means of communication between user and computer. So what are these functions? Resource management. The resource management function of an operating system allocates computer resources such as CPU time, main memory, secondary storage, and input and output devices for the use. So basically, you can say that these, you can say, CPU time, the memory, and the storage are basically the resources that a computer has. So operating system acts as a resource management. So operating system will allocate different CPU times, the different processor computing power, different memory, and different storage for the different tasks, and manages these resources efficiently so that all the required tasks could be efficiently, or you can say in a better way, can be completed. The data management. The data management functions of an operating system govern the input and output of the data and their location, storage, and retrieval. It also is responsible for storing and retrieving information on disk drives, and the other and for the organization of the information on the. So data management is basically, you can say, the when we are inputting the information to the system or the computer, then the operating system will, you can say, store or operate this information in such a manner that if it is required in at some any instant or of any other time, then its addresses and the resources will be traceable and could be easily retrieved. So it basically, you can say, manages the location, the storage of the input and output data that could be used for the user. Job management. The job management function of an operating system prepares schedules, controls, and monitors jobs submitted for execution to ensure the most efficient process. A job is a collection of one or more related programs and their tasks. So job management function is basically, you can say, it controls all the application. For example, if you are copying this a file to some other place, then we see, for example, how much percent the file has been copied, and it keeps on changing. So such kind of thing is managed by the job management. This is a job management task, and it is operated by the operating system that makes sure that 100% or 100% job is completed, and also show the users the current status of the job. Standard means of communication between user and the computer. The operating system, we have already discussed that it acts as a bridge between the user and the hardware. The operating system also establishes a standard means of communication between the user and their computer systems. It does this by providing a user interface and a standard set of commands that control the hardware. So it sets, you can say, the basic terminologies and basic ways for the user to, you can say, communicate with the hardware, and by following those commands, you can say, the user is able to communicate with the hardware. So user interface, a program that controls a display for the user, usually the computer monitor, and that allows the user to interact with the system. The user interface allows the user to communicate with the operating system. So user interface, as the name implies, user is basically a user, and interface is you can say anything that has a visual. So a user interface could be, you can say, command line or graphical user interface, as we will look in the coming slides. The user interface provides means for input and output because it displays you can say the data. So all the inputs and outputs will be displayed here, allowing the users to manipulate the system and allowing the users to indicate the effects of the so it will give you can say stimulus for the user to give commands to the system. For example, we are writing a Word document, so the user interface or the visuals present require us to write and let us see what we have written and which you can say the keys we have pressed. So this kind of thing is you can say possible because of the user interface. Types of the user interface. So these are the common types of the user interface. It is command line interface, or commonly known as CLI, and the graphical user interface, or GUI. So what is command line interface? Command line interface is the mechanism of interacting with the computer operating system or a software by typing commands. So there is no, you can say, the visual files or the my computer, or you can say the menu bar, or the cron exit or minimize or shorten symbols there. Only you can write commands, for example exit or open, or different types of commands to, you can say, use the computer. This method of instructing a computer perform a given task is referred as entering a command. So you enter a command and computer operates it. There is no, you can say, the visual interaction between the user and the hardware. Accepts input via keyboard only, and not suitable for the beginners because it needs to remember, we need to remember commands, and that is not very, you can say, the user friendly if you are a beginner. So this is a command line user interface. For example, this, you can see that this is the D drive has been opened, and there is some, you can say, maybe a folder, simple talk. So the example of the command are, for example, if we type dir command, it means to display the list of files in the folder. If you want to copy, we have to write copy. Similarly, md is used to make the new folder, and cls to clear the screen, and quit to quit any, you can say, the task running. So we need to remember these kinds of different commands to use the command line interface. Graphical user interface is a type of the user interface which allows people to interact with the computer with images rather than the text command. So, for example, our current, the most familiar, we are familiar with Windows 10 or Windows, you can say 8 or Windows 7. So these are all basically, these are the graphical user interface because we can see the files, folder, my computer, menu, and everything is visually interface. We use the pointers to mostly interact. Don't have to use much of the keyboard, for example. And it is very easy to learn, accepts input via keyboard and the pointing devices. Elements of the graphical user interface. So elements of the graphical user interface includes pointers, icons, desktop, windows, menus, all the things we commonly use in the Windows operating system. So pointer is basically a symbol that appears on the display. For example, this, in this pointer you can see here, and select an object to select objects and commands. Usually the pointer appears as a small angled arrow. So icons, the small pictures that represent commands, files, or windows are basically the icons. Desktop, the area on the display screen where the icons are grouped is often referred to as the desktop because as the icon are intended to represent the real objects on the real desktop. So basically the desktop is, you can say, a screen that we have normally when we start our computer, which have the, you can say, the collection of icons that we have grouped together. So this is basically a common desktop. Windows used to divide the screen into different areas. In each window, you can run a different program or display a different file. For example, this is one window, and this is one window, and this is another one. Alright, so therefore, the name comes the windows. Menus. Most graphical user interface let you execute commands by selecting a choice from a menu. Two types of menu: pull down menu and pull up menu. So this is, you can see the pull down menu. This is from the Apple and this is from the you can say the Windows. Types of user interface, we have already seen that command line interface and graphical user interface. So there could be difference between the ease and the control. For example, in terms of ease, you can say this is not much of the ease because you need a lot of memorization and familiarity. But the graphical user interface is, you can say, very much easier as compared to the command line interface. So it is much more easy or easeful. In terms of control, user have much more control on their file system. For example, users can copy a specific file from the location to another file location. Whereas graphical user interface, more advanced task needs command line. So, for example, if you have a Windows computer and you need to do the more, you can say, the advanced control tasks. For example, the servers and the other, you can say, where you need a specific command or you can say the specific control, we may need to go to the command line interface, or Linux or Unix based systems are used normally for that purposes, because the graphical user interface don't allow that much kind of a control. Multitasking. Command line environment are they are capable of multitasking, but they are not, you can say, easy to use in terms of multitasking. Whereas graphical user interface, you know that we can open multiple files and arrange them on screen in a different format, and the graphical user interface can help in a lot of multitasking. Speed. Command line users need only either keyboards to navigate the command, often execute. So few lines of code can be very, you can say, speedy, and the command line interface can quickly open or close, or you can say provide, can do different things in, you can say, very short term of command if you are familiar with it. Whereas graphical user interface are easier with the use of mouse. However, the mouse and keyboard to navigate control operating system for many things is going much slower than the command line interface. So as compared to speed, we can achieve much more in the command line interface if we are familiar with it. So examples of the operating systems are MS-DOS, Microsoft Windows, Mac operating system, Linux, Solaris, Android. So Microsoft DOS. DOS stands for the disk operating system developed by the Microsoft to use the command line interface. So for example, we need to write commands to use this operating system. It does not support the multiple user and multiple tasking. The first version was, you can say, 1981, and the last version was 1995. So this is basically a Microsoft DOS. You can see here. So we need to write commands to operate. There are no icons or no menus and no windows or anything. Produced by the Microsoft Windows, and is a user graphical user interface and supports multiple tasking, multiple users. And the first Windows was announced in 1985, and we have now the latest version, the Windows 10. So this is basically, you can say, Windows. Mac operating system. The official name of the Macintosh operating system, created by the Apple operating system for the Apple Macintosh computer. So if you have a Apple computer, then it will be running the Mac operating system. The first version was 1984 and Mac System 1, and the latest version is around 10, Mac System 10, and it is called Catalina. So this is the, you can say, screen of Mac operating system. Linux, a freely distributable open source operating system that runs on a number of hardware platforms, because Windows is, you can say, distributed by the Microsoft, and the Mac operating systems come built in with the Apple computers. So you can say that these are not, you can say, free, whereas the Linux is a freely distributable open source system. So it is, you can say, the freely available. Its files are freely available for every person to, you can say, change or accommodate to its needs. Linux has become a very extremely powerful alternative to proprietary operating systems. First version is in 1992, and the latest version maybe 5.6.11. So this is, you can say, how a Linux operating system looks like. Android is a Linux-based operating system for the mobile devices such as the smartphones and tablet computers. I think everyone of you is most familiar with the Android, because mostly we are using the Android devices. It is developed by the Open Handset Alliance led by the Google and other companies. First version came in 2008, and we now have the, you can say, Android 10, the latest version. So this is a normal smartphone screen, and what Android looks like. Solaris. Solaris is a Unix operating system originally developed by the Sun Microsystem. Solaris can be installed from the physical media or the network or the desktop. And so it is basically used on the server and workstation. That is why basically most of us are not familiar with the Solaris. So its first version came in the 1991, and the current version is running around 11. So this is how a Solaris operating system looks like on a computer.